How confident would you say you are as a new manager in meetings? Are you always able to share your thoughts or advocate for your ideas when necessary? If you're currently in the headspace where you're thinking, how can I be more confident and speak up more in meetings now that I'm a new manager? This video is for you. I'm so glad to be bringing this your way because this is something that I had to learn to work by working on myself, as well as helping several leaders work on themselves so that they can become more confident at work or on stage, no matter where they are. If you're not, I'm sure some of you may not be familiar with me, but I host events. I'm a corporate MC, a professional MC rather, and I also work in the corporate environment. So I have an understanding of the two stages. Your corporate stage being your meeting rooms or your virtual calls, and then we have the big stages at conferences and other kind of events. So here's the thing that I want to start with. Confidence comes from conviction. And this is something that I had to learn over the years because perhaps you're like me and you currently say something that I used to say, or you've heard one or two persons say it, which is that confidence is something that you fake until you become. So fake it till you make it. And I used to say that when it comes to confidence, with speaking, confidence in your abilities and in the gifts that the Lord has given you. But I've come to understand that true confidence comes from conviction. And this kind of confidence is not something that you fake. Conviction means that you believe strongly in something that it's almost impossible for somebody to talk you out of that thing. You believe so much in an idea that is almost impossible for anybody to talk you out of it. And as I share this, I want you to think back to some of the great speeches that you've heard or your leaders in your workplaces where you know that this person is always very persuasive, very convincing when they speak. And begin to ask yourself, why do they sound the way they sound? Where does that confidence come from? It's because they believe there's something that they know and have come to believe strongly. It can be a strong belief that they have about themselves or about the idea that they are sharing or something that they believe about the market that your organization trades in. And when I say a deep belief, this kind of belief comes from knowing. It's about something that you know and know and know and know. This and I want you to just think back. You find that the people who speak up with more confidence often have that trait. And I'm not talking about people who fake it or who pretend to know something that they don't know, but people who genuinely believe in something, you see that they have more confidence when they are sharing about it. Even yourself, think about if you cook. If you don't cook, don't worry, this is not this is not a drag on you. But if you cook, think about the meal that you know how to cook very well, that if I woke you up to cook that meal, you would get up and do it effortlessly and it will still come out really lovely and tasty. Do you know why you could do that without even shaking? It's because you've mastered this recipe so well that you can do it even in your sleep. I don't even have to wake you up. So that's where true confidence comes in. Now, let's bring it back to your role as a new manager. How do you speak with confidence in meetings so that your voice is heard, but most importantly, your ideas are given the attention and the weight that it carries? And also, this is for you if you struggle to even speak up. You know what you're doing, you understand your work, but sometimes or most times, especially now that you're a manager, you're struggling to express yourself in meetings. I'm going to be sharing 7 tips to help you get better with your confidence as well as being able to express yourself confidently. So let's get into it. The first tip is prepare ahead. Before going into any meeting, you need to prepare for that meeting. By preparation, there are two areas that I want you to focus on. First is the context of that meeting and then the content of that meeting. If you're the one setting up the meeting as the new manager that you are, you should definitely determine why you're putting that meeting together. What is it that you want to accomplish? What is the essence of the meeting? Should the meeting even be holding in the first place? Where you determine that yes, this meeting should hold. Why? Why should it hold? What business objective does it support? What decisions are you trying to make? Or are you hoping to make by the end of that meeting? You have to understand these things. That is the context for that meeting. If you're not the person who is initiating the meeting, somebody else has put together the meeting and is inviting you to be a part of it, you also want to be sure that this information is made available to you. Most times when somebody is sending out an email, for instance, about a meeting, they would tell you what the meeting is about and what they hope that would be achieved by the end of the meeting. Don't just scan through it and let it be. Make sure that you understand why that meeting is holding, what business objective it supports, who is going to be in the room, who else is going to be in the room. This information is going to help you put your thoughts together, think about what you're going to share. With regards to the content, you want to look at the agenda for the meeting. What exactly is going to be discussed? Does any one of those things require your direct input? Or are you going to be listening in and then share your thoughts about something that other people have shared during the meeting? So it's very important that you have that understanding. What is the context of the meeting and what is the content of the meeting? If it's a brainstorming meeting, you'll be able to come up with ideas about that project or that task so that during the meeting you can share. That preparation alone boosts your confidence because you've already known what you're going to speak on. Remember where I said true confidence comes from? Conviction. And conviction is as a result of something that you know. So work on that. Work on your content before going into the meeting. But for you to be able to do that, you have to know what the meeting is about, the context, and the content. The second point, and I'm using P's for all of these tips. So the first P is prepare ahead. The second P is to put your thoughts in a structure. This is something that you're going to be hearing me say a lot if you're watching my channel. Structures help you to go directly to the point. Speak to the point and stop. That's what having a structure helps you to do. It helps you avoid rambling. It also makes it easy for the people listening to you to follow your train of thought. Because at the end of the day, communication is effective when the intended message equals the actual message. So I'm going to say that again. Your communication is effective when the intended message, which is the message that you intended to pass across, equals the actual message that was received by your audience. So it's important that you put your thoughts in a structure. And I have a book, it's called Answer Without Rambling: How New Managers Can Answer Difficult Questions at Work Without Freezing, Over Explaining, or Losing Credibility. In that book, in that e-guide, rather, I shared some frameworks to help you structure your responses to difficult questions. But you can also use it when you are preparing your for a meeting or where you're preparing your thoughts for a meeting. I mentioned in the previous points, prepare ahead, to actually come up with ideas that you would want to share during the meeting and note it down somewhere, especially if you don't have to prepare a slide for it. You can note it down in your notepad, wherever you jot thoughts down. So note it down. So while you're noting it down, don't just write, I'm going to speak on this. Break that this down in a structure. I like to use the PREP. It's called prep structure. So the P is to write the main point, then the R is the reason, the E is the example or a supporting detail. A supporting detail can be referring to something that happened in the past, or sharing a statistics, or quoting your performance, any performance as that relates to what you are talking about in that meeting, or that relates to the idea that you want to share. And then you close up with the main point again. So it's really easy when you have it like that, such that when you begin to speak, you're not going to be afraid of, oh, where do I start from? What do I say first? What do I say next? You're also not going to be nervous about, oh, are they going to get my point? Because you've already outlined your point, you stated your main point, you stated the reason your main point, why you're suggesting your main point or stating your main point, and then you've given an example or a supporting detail, and you're closing with that main point. It's short, it's straight to the point. Everyone gets an idea of what you want to talk about. So having this laid out in your jotter would reduce the level of anxiety that you feel before going into the meeting. Having said that, if you find that you're in the meeting already, the meeting is going on, and an idea comes to you that you believe, oh, this is, I would really want to share this, you also follow the same step. Before speaking, get your pen, write down the points that you want to share, the idea that just came to your mind that you would like to share. Write it down. What's the reason I think this idea is important? Write that down. In short forms, you don't have to write the entire sentence out and then try to memorize. And then write a supporting detail and write the points, so that when you do raise your hand to speak, or when you do motion that you'd love to share something, you already have an outline of what you're going to say. Simple, straight to the point, no nerves, and you're good to go. So that's the second P. Put your thoughts together in a structure. And if you want to get the e-guide that I had mentioned before, check out the link in the description below to download a copy, a free copy. So what is the third P? The third P is to project your voice. Projecting your voice is one way that you can sound confident in meetings. Usually, when we are not sure about what we want to say, or when we are afraid of how what we want to say is going to be received by those in the room, we have a tendency to subconsciously begin to speak lower than normal. So you can find yourself almost talking to yourself, because your mind is trying to protect you from saying the wrong thing, or speaking out, or from the reactions that you may get from the people in the room when you do share what is in your mind to share. So you have to be aware of that is something that can happen to you when you are nervous, and then you have to have a plan to shut that down and break out of it, basically. And what is the plan that you want to have? Projecting your voice. To project your voice doesn't mean to shout. No. And if you have your earplugs in, I'm so sorry about that, but I don't mean that you should shout. I mean that you should allow your voice to come out of your body as you're speaking, so that the people in the room can hear you. They can hear you. And what this looks like is, try and speak from your diaphragm. I'm not sure if you can see, but your diaphragm is below your rib cage. That's where you find it. So try to speak from there. Now, to show you what I mean, I want us to do a quick exercise. Are you ready? Okay, so what we're going to do is, I want you to say hello, how are you? But I'm going to show you the different parts of your body where you're going to say hello, how are you from. Are you ready? All right, let's go. So the first place you're going to say hello, how are you would be from our nasal point, our nasal part of the apple. From our nose, let's just say that. From your nose. I want you to say hello, how are you? But try speaking from your nose. You're speaking from your mouth, but imagine that the sound is coming from your nasal area. So let's do that. Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Okay, so we've done that. Let's speak from our throats. Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? So you can see it's deeper than when we spoke from here. If you speak from here, you sound a little lighter and a little shallow. But when you speak from here, it's deeper and it's a bit louder. Now let's go down to speak to produce that same sound from our diaphragm. Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? So you can see the sound is even much deeper. Now let's do one more and speak from our belly. Speak as though the sound is coming from your belly. Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? So you can see that for every point of your body where you're speaking from, the quality of the sound is different. When you're projecting your voice, you want to speak from your diaphragm because that's where you get the clearest sound. And it's also important that you try to breathe in because when you're nervous, what happens is that you're breathing fast, your heart is beating faster, trying to get blood to all of the important places in your body at that point in time. And then you are you're so nervous, your breath is shallow, so you want to take a deep breath. I'm sure you've heard, so I'm going to talk about that as well, but you want to take a deep breath as you speak so that when you're releasing the air as you speak, your sound is clearer. Another important thing about projecting your voice is to enunciate your words better. So when you are nervous, one of the other things that happens is that you start to speak a little bit faster. So you go a little bit faster. And when you're speaking too fast, it's almost always impossible for you to enunciate all of your words well. So by enunciating your words, I mean clearly pronouncing your words. The trick with pronunciation is to try and pronounce the consonants in your words as you speak, because it's consonants that we often leave out when we're speaking too fast. So when it comes to enunciating your words and your sentences, try to pronounce the consonants in your words as you speak. So that is the third P. We've said prepare ahead. That's first. The second P is put your thoughts together in a structure. The third P is project your voice. Let's go further to the fourth P. And with the fourth P, I want you to pace yourself. You can see that I'm going at a particular structure. I'm using a structure. So you pace yourself. I've mentioned that when you are nervous, you tend to speak too fast. You tend to breathe shallowly, and it impacts the quality of of your vocal sound, and it shows in the way that you express yourself. For some of you, your voice would actually start to shake when you are nervous. So these things that I'm telling you to do, as you practice them, is going to help you sound better and, most importantly, communicate with confidence when you have an idea to share in your meetings. So I said pace yourself because you are going to start needing to speak fast so you can be done and get back and come out of that spotlight. Because once you start talking, everybody turns to look at you. So that spotlight is one of the things that people are often afraid of. And so what they want to do is they want to rush into it, be done, step back into the shadows and allow the spotlight to land on somebody better than them. But there's nobody better in that room. And I don't care what the room is, there is absolutely nobody better than you. Somebody may know something better than you do know that thing, but you have worth as a person. And when you have an idea, that idea may actually be just you hearing it at that particular point in time. So, how do you pace yourself? I've mentioned speaking at a slower rate. Try to enunciate your words. If you try to enunciate your words, you're most likely going to speak a bit slower. But have a mental note to go slower than you would normally speak. Now that you know that when you're nervous, you go faster. So try to make a mental note to go slower whenever you want to speak. People, when you speak slower, people can hear you, people can follow you, especially when you are using a structure, so they can follow your train of thought, and then you can land your idea. Another thing you should do when you're learning to pace yourself is to learn to count one, two in your mind before you start to speak. I know it seems like a long time, like when they say, "Oh yeah, Buife, you can go ahead. What did you have? What did you want to say?" I know that seems like a long time, but trust me, it's not. Trust me, it is not. That singular pausing at the beginning would help you. You can take a quick deep breath at that point, and you can, again, you have your notes out there, what you want to say, so it's easy for you to quickly get into it, but get into it stronger. And then as you go through your sentences, when you get to a comma, count one. When you get to a full stop, count one, two, and then you continue like that. So pace yourself as you speak, because that is a natural way that people who are confident usually speak, like especially as a leader in an organization. Our fifth P is to pan the room. What do I mean by pan the room? When I ask, I've had the honor of coaching a lot of professionals, a lot of career professionals. And one of the areas that people are like, no, 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 this is not my thing, is when it comes to making eye contact with your audience. Now, this is something that I learned way back in secondary school. And I learned it from the negative way because I used to be very shy. But something happened one time with that I had to have a conversation with our principal at the time, and she asked me a question. I gave her the answer, but my answer was intentionally not 100% true. Yes, it wasn't true. Some of it was true, but I omitted the part where I knew it would get me into trouble. So, but then she said something that stuck with me for a really long time. She said, "I believe you because you don't have shifty eyes." I was like, wait, what? "I believe you because you don't have shifty eyes." When people struggle to maintain eye contact, we often call them shy, afraid, nervous. So when you are working on becoming more confident, or rather to speak with more confidence in your meetings, one of the things you must learn to do is to maintain eye contact with your audience. And no, I'm not asking you to stare at people. I'm asking you to learn to catch catch their eyes, catch their gaze, and speak to them, because the eyes are the windows to our souls. That's why. Remember when we were little? I don't know how old you all are, but when we were growing up, and we used to watch Nigerian movies a lot. One of the things that you I don't know if they still say that these days, but you would hear a guy, maybe the parents of the girl doesn't want them to be together, don't want them to be together anymore, and the girl wants to break up the relationship. Then the guy goes, look me in the eye and tell me you don't love me anymore. And it sounds impossible for the lady to look the guy in the eye and say, I don't want you anymore. That is the power of the eyes, looking someone in the eyes. So how do we do it? If you're saying, thankfully you're saying I don't have to stare at them. Please don't stare. It's rude to stare at people. But what you can do is, first, some tips that I would share with you here is look for friendly faces. Look for the faces of people who are nodding at what you're saying. Try to look at them. Again, one, two, you can look at them for one, two, and then you turn to the next person who you believe is paying attention. That is one way that you can do it. A second tip is to try and look them here. Look them here. And then instead of looking them directly in the eyes, look them at the middle of between their eyebrows. It's going to seem as if you're looking them in the eye, but you know you're not really looking them in the eye until you get comfortable with looking them in the eye. Another tip I'm going to share with you is to, when you can look at someone and make a full sentence before you take your eyes off to another person. And I often say to people, look at somebody on one end of your panning. Look at one person here to your left, for instance, and then look at somebody to the right, then come back and look at somebody to the center. And you do that, you rotate it that way so you're more comfortable. But another important tip that I'm going to share with you, especially in the workplace, is when you're having a meeting where when you get to a point where you need to say something that you know that is going to resonate with a particular person in that room, face that person and say what you want to say, because you want to get their buy-in and you know that this particular line is going to hit them. Turn, face them and say that. Then you continue to do that. You continue to pan the room. So we've said prepare ahead, put your thoughts together in a structure. And I mentioned that you can get my free e-guide, Answer Without Rambling, how new managers can answer difficult questions at work without freezing, over explaining, or losing credibility. The link is in the description below. So get your copy and make sure to read and use the tips that I shared in that e-guide. The third P is to project your voice. The fourth P is to pace yourself. The fifth P is to pan the room. The sixth P, pull some air in. Pull some air in. In other words, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. I mentioned when I talked about projecting your voice why it's important to take deep breaths. But generally, if you are struggling with anxiety at the moment, one of the ways that you can reduce that and become more confident is to actually take deep breaths. So you can take deep breaths before you go into the meeting. And if thankfully the meeting is a virtual meeting, you can quickly turn off your camera, take a deep breath before coming back up to speak. So it doesn't take a lot of time, just 2 to 3 seconds. Just take deep breaths so that you can get air into your belly, into your lungs rather, and have air as you speak. It's going to really, really help you. And finally, I want to talk about practicing. Practicing is so important. When when I run public speaking courses, one of the things that I insist and I have in my curriculum is practice. It's there. If you're working with me on a one-on-one, it is there. But I've also created something even more awesome, which is what I call the Rehearsal Lab. And the whole essence of this is the way you get better at any skill is to practice that skill. Communication is a skill. Public speaking is a skill. Presentation is a skill. To learn a skill, you have to practice that skill. The more you practice, the better at that skill you become, especially when you're practicing right. You're going to get better over time. It's the same in this scenario. So, all these things that I've talked about, turn on your video camera. It's really simple. Turn on your video camera and practice, watch yourself, review what you've done, watch it again, see what where you could have done better, what you did well enough that you need to replicate as you go on. Learn how you sound, learn how you talk, become comfortable with you, because one of the reasons people also struggle with anxiety when speaking anxiety is they feel that they need to sound like somebody else to know that, oh, now I'm good. But that's not true. That's not true. What you need to do is work on you, on becoming comfortable with yourself, become comfortable with how you sound, become comfortable with your mannerisms. Yes, you can learn body language, and I'll probably talk about body language in another video, but you can learn body language and all of that. But there's something that is unique to how you express yourself when you're talking to your friends, when you're talking to your family members. There's a way that you express yourself. Become Understand what that way is and become comfortable with it so that any improvements you're making is going to be building on who you really are. This point is so important because that's how you show up authentically yourself. You don't come trying to sound like Steve Jobs or your line manager or your CEO. No, you build the CEO in you, if I'm going to say it like that. You develop the voice of the CEO in you, but you have to do that by practicing and looking at what you've done, understanding how you reason, how you think, the kind of the words that you choose. Why do you choose those words? Why is that the word that you're choosing? So those are very important. If you'd want to join us in the rehearsal lab, where we do this with other managers in the room. We give each other feedback. We learn what we are doing well, where we can improve, how we are thinking about issues in the workplace, and how best to think about them. Check the description box below for the link to sign up. If you do have any questions or anything related to communication in the workplace as a manager, please drop that in the comments. I'm going to take your questions and I'll make a video for you to help you out. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like this video if you haven't. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, also subscribe to the channel. If you struggle with answering difficult questions at work, that was the video I did last week. And so I'm going to link it up to this video. Make sure to check around, click on it, and also watch that. See you in the next one.